Hi again. My name is Robert Thomas Stephen Scidnce, and I'm the author of the Book of Kings. And today we're going to be discussing why hyperextended knowledge is the gift of aftermath science. That's what you get by uh, understanding and listening to the talks for aftermath science. And it's also available in the book too. So if you can't afford the book, you could certainly listen to the talks. And the book is rather inexpensive if you get it. And right here's I'm going to show you what the book looks like. The Book of Kings, America's Aftermath Science and Historical Formation. In God We Trust. And extended knowledge is the gift of aftermath science. Okay, so what is hyper extended knowledge? Actually, I don't know if that word really exists in a dictionary, but that's what it is. It's something that's above and beyond what the common man would realize or come to know on his own. There's a discernment. There's different levels of knowledge and wisdom. Did you know that there's a knowledge called absolute knowledge? And absolute knowledge is something that basically is not really possessed by human beings, but rather angelic beings like angels. And because we didn't have absolute knowledge, man doesn't have that because he's faulty. The things that he believes in are could be in error. And so from that aspect, he's redeemable. But the angels, on the other hand, those angels in heaven that didn't want to go along with what God was saying, and they wanted to be something greater or better, or I don't know the whole story completely, but they left. They left their estate, and then they became the demons and the things that we find here on earth. But we'll talk about that another time. These are things not to scare you or whatever. It's more things that are informative. But hyperextended knowledge, on the other hand, is about as high as you can get with reasoning, and that is the gift of aftermath science. So you're not going to find this in any textbook anywhere. You're just not. So what about hyperextended knowledge in the history of in the formation of America? Well, hyperextended knowledge is something that was around for many, many years in the form of religion, especially in Christianity. But it takes place for man in the corridors of history from what we call the historical origins of something. And that's what I am. I'm the author of Historical Origins on the 4 subjects. And as I explained, those 4 subjects lead you through aftermath science from the historical origins on the 4 subjects of science, nature, man, and God, which encompasses everything. So there isn't anybody out there that does this. I'm the only one that actually has incorporated aftermath science on those 4 subjects to be as basically as one subject. In a lot of ways, there's a causal connection or a nexus that makes them connected in some way. And so there you have it. So let's look at aftermath science in the form of the United States of America. Something in my garage here at any rate. The formation of the United States of America came about from many, many different countries, and they were all from Western Europe and Western civilization. You had England, France, Germany, Spain. All those countries came here, planted their flags in the name of God, and that was a Christian God, for God and country. So they came here for that, and the people that were here in this country, for the most part, the majority of them were all Christian. They had backgrounds. And back in the day, back in the 1400s, a lot of Catholics. So there was the Catholic information in the world, and the beliefs that the Catholics had with the popes and all that. And as you read history, you're going to find that out. So in final, when the United States broke off from England and the colonies that were here, and we fought against the British, we had people that were running the country like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and these others that had great influence, Hamilton, and they all had great influence. They were not, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they said, the life and the liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and these types of things were God-given by the Creator. The minute they mentioned the Creator, they weren't talking about some foreign creator. They're referring to God in Christ, because that's exactly who the Bible says, that God was the one that created everything. And that would be the three persons. They all cooperated in the making of the world, period, the heavens and the earth. And the Bible goes on to say that Christ, he was in the world, and the world was made by him, but the world knew him not. So there you go. Nothing that was made without him. That's quite a statement. So at its roots, the people that were here in this country were Christians. This was a Christian nation. And the founding fathers coming out of England, basically, didn't want to have a king. Remember King Henry VIII? That guy who kicked the Pope out of England because he wouldn't be granted a divorce. And then all of England went to the Church of England, and that became their Christianity from that particular king Henry VIII. But at any rate, they were not trying to get away from Christianity. They just didn't want it to be the same way, where the church and the king were inseparable. So we have a constitution, basically. But for the most part, for the first 150 years, if you want to say, all the laws were based on the Ten Commandments and the morals and ethics in the New Testament about Jesus Christ were incorporated into our law. And by today's standard, those laws are going away. I had spoken earlier that man-made laws were superseding the God-given law concerning everything. Every law that you could think of on the books is being taken over, by the legal society. And this is what you're going to find. This is what you're going to find today in the courts and other places that just don't follow the true history. And it's the eradication of Christianity in the United States. I believe in my heart of hearts that that those founding fathers of ours, their intentions was to have freedom of religion, and that was not going to be prevented. And yet today we're finding that the federal powers that be and the courts and that are are stripping away the freedoms, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion. They're forcing people basically to be involved in things against their will on many different levels, especially in life issues and those types of things, which is at odds. And we'll go into that at another time to explore that and have a greater understanding of what's going on. So with that in mind, we lived in a Christian society here that the founding fathers were not eradicating Christianity. And what they didn't realize was that the world eventually, as where we're at today, would be returning back to paganistic practices and things of that nature. I'm not here to condemn anything. I am a historian. I'm writing the things that are actually going on in our country today. That's history. It's not theology. It's the things that people actually believed when they were here. So the Supreme Court turns around after the Scopes trial and evolution and all this, trying to stop and block all the way down that, there's a separation of church and state. But there are many people here that didn't believe in it the way it's being transferred today. It just wasn't part of it. So now in the educational realm, you can't have those things. But I told you about my book, The Book of Kings. Guess what? You wouldn't want to argue with me before the Supreme Court because you would lose. That's right. In some aspects, I'm greater than the greatest lawyers. I'm the one that explained about the law, that the written law is greater than even the physical laws, because the physical laws come apart at the seams when you break the written law. Who's going to tell you that? No one. No one's going to tell you that. So why is my book undeniable? It's not a theology book. I'm talking about the things that actually took place here in the United States of America. That's history. The things that they believed in. So the book that I wrote, The Book of Kings, cannot be stopped because it's a history book. It actually talks about the things that were present and what the things are that people actually believed in. So if you get a copy of that book, you could take it to your school and say, hey, I want this history book in our school. It's not a theology book. It's about history. Can the court stop you from that, from history? No, they can't. I am a real person in history. I wrote that book, and I wrote it as a history book. So therefore, you will be safe. And there could be lawsuits and things that could ensue because of that. But it doesn't matter in time. We talked about aftermath science, the way it was presented in Genesis to some degree, that is not going away. That was the history for thousands of years. That's what people believed. It wasn't only until recently, within the last 100 years or so, that all of a sudden, because of man's technology, he gets a boat in the 1400s, late 1400s, and he starts circumventing the world, finding the world again. Isn't that something? That wasn't that long ago. It was only 500 years. And all of a sudden, we progressed so far. They were finding people on continents, tribes of different people, and they were there already. And now science is trying to explain nature and everything else, the cosmos, when in reality they don't. I have degrees in criminal justice. I was a deputy sheriff. I have degrees in business. So I'm not your average individual. I was a deputy sheriff, and I also was in the infantry. And I was a point man at one point. I used to lead the company, periodically through the jungles. Give me a map. Well, this is no different. This is another map that I have that I'm trying to lead you through the jungle safely so that you get caught out in the open and being taken advantage of. So again, with aftermath science, you're getting this hyper-extended knowledge, which is not the common man. We talked about AI and these other things that are coming into the norm now, where people are really worried, but AI can't come to the conclusions that I'm giving you on the different subjects and their origins, because they're not using that information that was given to you by God. So the Holy Bible encapsulates everything on this earth from the beginning day to the end, and you're not going to stop that. We talked about light is the time element on the earth that points to the motions of the planets and the moon. I just went out today. It's a beautiful night sky. Enjoy the beauty of what God created. I think this is called a harvest moon. It's a real big moon. Thing looked like a saucer out there. It was so beautiful. All right, that's what you're going to find. And even with the moon, now that I mentioned it, aftermath science, how can we defeat, everything that's bad? Well, we can. They're saying, oh, the moon made me do it. Oh, all these crazies and stuff that come out. And so, they could be. I mean, they started believing in all this stuff, but that's not the way it was in the beginning. Here we go with the origins. When God created the moon to give light, the lesser light, during the night, so we have a light at night. If there's more crime, why is that? Could it be, well, maybe you could see better? Ever wonder about that? But can people say, oh, the moon made me do it? Something that God created that was good, and all of a sudden it's turning you into an evil thing or whatever. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to find. It goes above and beyond what I consider the normal view, but I'm certain there are people that actually believe that kind of stuff. So, hyper-extended knowledge, what is that common man? The common man doesn't discern the things of God, first of all, because sometimes they are spiritually discerned. Jesus even said, you can predict the weather, but you don't know the times. Well, we have great weathermen today, most of the time. They still get paid whether they're right or wrong anyway. But I'm just saying, under today's standards, that's a true statement. People don't realize what's being taken away from them, their freedoms and that we originally had in this country. So hyperextended knowledge, how does that work? Well, it's because you're looking at the things from the view of when God actually, perhaps in many ways, created the things that are here. You're not being taken down the primrose path of things that were never made in nature the way they're being espoused in the sciences. And they've taken over our country, and it's not fair in a lot of ways. So this was a Christian country. Don't let everybody tell you different. The laws are going away. They were on the books. There was all kinds of laws. No divorce, adultery, living together, you name it. It was on there. And that was based on the faith and morals of, polygamy, having more than one wife, these kinds of things. They were all on the books. I don't know, today under the circumstances, you can't even keep up with it. You can't keep up with everybody fighting over the Constitution and what it means, your right to bear arms. Well, you do. The founding fathers of our country didn't want some extraordinary government coming into control and taking over the people. So a lot of the Constitution has to do with the protection of the people and not have an overpowering government. So these fights go on and on. You have political parties that are one on one side and one on the other. But in the meantime, your rights are being stripped away, or they're so convoluted now under the law that you don't know what to believe. So how could you say, oh, the judge is going to say, oh, ignorance of the law is not acceptable? No, it is acceptable. You keep changing the law every 10 minutes on different things. Think about that for a minute. How can anybody in their right mind keep up with the law? You'd have to be watching stuff 24/7. You go into court today, hey, wrong. You could know something that's not in the law today by what's happening. Every day they're changing something, or some crazy newfangled idea that's coming up, or some way to manipulate the law so that they can usurp the Constitution. This is what you're going to find. But hyperesthetic knowledge is not going to make you angry. It's just something that's going to be there so that you don't get taken up with things that are coming down the road or are already there that aren't true about science, nature, man, and God. We're going to talk further at another time about the church. What is the church? Specifically about about Christianity. We're going to talk about that. It'll be very interesting. But in the meantime, yes, the gift of hyperextended knowledge is for you, so that you can know the different things that you have to navigate through in our world. Nobody's asking you to fight against the status quo. But what you can do is you could have superior knowledge in certain areas. And that's what you're getting, the free gift of hyperextended knowledge through aftermath science. So I hope you enjoyed this talk. I hope that you get the book if you can. And again, I'm not here to sell books. But if you can't, then you listen to the talks. You're going to pick up on something. And I appreciate that. So in the meantime, have a blessed day.